Kirk Cousins doesn't throw punches, not in 15 years in this league. So when he grabbed Maxx Crosby by the jersey in front of the entire Raiders roster, everybody on that practice field stopped moving. Two of the most important players in Las Vegas tangled up, teammates sprinting in to pull them apart. Now the team has responded, and the decision they made says a lot about where this Raiders team is headed. Raiders fans want to know exactly what happened between Kirk Cousins and Maxx Crosby and what the team decided to do about it. Training camp in Henderson had been quiet for 2 weeks. Then Friday happened. The Raiders lined up for a final team period. Crosby had been dominant the entire day. Crosby, who'd been dominant all day, burst off the line to beat Cousins' protection. Cousins saw him coming. He tried to get rid of the ball fast, firing toward rookie receiver Malik Benson on a crossing route. He never got the throw off clean. Crosby got his hand up at Cousins' release point, tipped it, and forced the ball to fall short of the intended target. That alone wouldn't normally cause a problem. Tipped passes happen every single practice. But this wasn't the first time Crosby had gotten a hand on Cousins that day. According to reporting from the team, Crosby hit Cousins' arm twice during the team period. When Crosby hit Cousins' arm a second time, the 15-year veteran had had enough. Cousins didn't shrug it off. He didn't walk back to the huddle. He went straight at Crosby. Cousins got into Crosby's face, grabbing the All-Pros jersey, while both exchanged words before it was broken up. Teammates flooded in immediately. No punches landed, but for a few seconds, it looked like they might. Think about the matchup for a second. This isn't two guys the same size squaring up. The 37-year-old quarterback appeared upset that Crosby tipped his pass, forcing an incompletion, and then charged the 6'5", 256-pound defensive end who is 3 inches taller and 42 pounds heavier. Cousins, the franchise quarterback, going chest to chest with a man who outsizes him in every direction. Nobody expected that from him. That's exactly why it went viral within minutes. Coach Clint Kubiak was standing right there. He watched it unfold in real time and immediately understood the optics. His $180 million quarterback and his best defensive player brawling in front of cameras and fans who'd paid to watch camp. The reaction from the locker room came fast. Tight end Michael Mayer didn't dodge the question when reporters brought it up. He said he didn't want to see punches thrown, but on any padded day at camp, tempers are going to flare. Then he turned it into a compliment. Cousins is the starting quarterback right now, and Mayer said, "You want him to defend his team, you want him to have that edge." He added that Cousins has had that edge since the day they met. That's one voice. Then Kubiak addressed it directly with the media, and he didn't try to bury it or downplay it as nothing. He called it what it was, two leaders of the team going at it. He said it happens, it's part of camp. But he was blunt about the stakes. If you fight or throw a punch during an actual game, you're ejected. So players have to be smart. That's voice number 2, and it wasn't dismissive, it was a warning wrapped inside praise. Then came a detail that reframed the entire incident. Reporting out of camp revealed that the quarterback threw 2 interceptions, before bouncing back with a good 2-minute drill period, prior to the altercation, so maybe there was some pent-up aggression at play here. Cousins wasn't just annoyed about a tipped pass, he'd been off all day, and Crosby's second hit on his throwing arm was the final straw on top of a frustrating session. And this wasn't even the only scuffle that day. The Crosby-Cousins scuffle was one of 2 altercations that took place during Friday's practice. Henderson had turned into a pressure cooker, and the 2 most recognizable names on the roster were right in the middle of it. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Cousins with a fistful of Crosby's jersey, teammates pulling bodies apart, Kubiak standing off to the side watching his season suddenly get a lot more complicated before a single preseason snap had been played. Fights happen at training camp, coaches usually wave them off, call it just football, and move on within an hour. This time, the Raiders didn't do that. They made a decision, and they made it public. The morning after the fight, Kubiak stood in front of reporters and confirmed it. Maxx Crosby and Kirk Cousins will sit out practice Saturday. Raiders head coach Clint Kubiak confirmed the decision to reporters. Not a suspension in the traditional sense, no fines announced, no roster moves, but a benching from team drills for the 2 players who matter most to this franchise's 2026 season. ESPN's Adam Schefter broke the news to the wider football world, tweeting that Kubiak told reporters both men were being held out for violating team rules on fighting. That single tweet turned a local training camp scuffle into a national story within the hour. Kubiak explained the reasoning himself, and he kept it simple. He said the team has very clear expectations about how they practice and how they conduct their business, and that both players violated that standard the day before, so the coaching staff held them out. He said that's all he was going to say about it. They addressed it with the team and they were moving forward. That's a coach drawing a line without throwing either player under the bus. He didn't single out Cousins for grabbing a jersey. He didn't single out Crosby for hitting the quarterback's arm twice. He punished the fight itself, applying the same standard to his $180 million passer and his highest paid defender. The practical effect was immediate and visible to everyone watching camp. Las Vegas Raiders quarterback Kirk Cousins and defensive end Maxx Crosby were suspended from team drills at practice Saturday following their fight the day before, giving rookie QB Fernando Mendoza his first opportunity in training camp to run the starting offense. The number 1 overall pick got shoved into the spotlight because 2 of the team's stars couldn't keep their composure. Cousins and Crosby weren't sent home though. They still showed up, still went through individual drills, still stretched with the group. Cousins and Crosby stretched with the team and participated in individual drills Saturday, but they remained on the sideline during the 11-on-11 period. It was a visible public benching. The entire roster watched their 2 most important players stand on the sideline during full team work while a rookie ran the show. Kubiak made clear this wasn't a long-term thing. Both players would be back the following week once the team returned from its scheduled day off. But that almost made the punishment sting more. It wasn't about missing meaningful reps, it was about the message. Even Cousins and Crosby aren't above the rules. Crosby, for his part, didn't push back on the punishment publicly. He'd actually talked about this exact tension before camp even started. He said he's got an entire set of expectations laid out for him, rules he has to follow or he'll get in trouble. And he accepted that comes with being who he is on the field. He said he plays one way, and he knows sometimes he pushes the line. That's a player who knows his own reputation. Crosby has never been the guy who takes it easy in practice, ever, with anyone. And this time, that intensity collided directly with his own quarterback. To understand why the coaching staff came down the way they did, you need to understand who Maxx Crosby actually is on a practice field. This isn't the first time his aggression has boiled over into a physical confrontation, and it won't shock anyone who's followed his career. Go back to a joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams. Crosby and running back Cam Akers ended up throwing actual punches. Not a shouting match, not a jersey grab, real haymakers. Crosby and Akers fought along the Rams' sideline at the end of a play during a team period. It looked as if Crosby tried to knock the ball out after they were both out of bounds, and Akers took offense to it. Punches were thrown and both teams poured onto the field to break up the 2 combatants. Rams coach Sean McVay tried to wave it off publicly, saying he hadn't seen exactly what happened and calling it a minor skirmish that got separated quickly. But his own policy told a different story. McVay was blunt that there's a zero-tolerance approach to fighting in those joint sessions, and if you throw hands, you're done for the day. That's exactly what happened. Neither Crosby nor Akers returned to practice after the incident. And Crosby, when asked about it afterward, didn't apologize. He said he was just doing what he does, and if the other guy didn't like it, that was on him. That quote tells you everything about how Crosby operates. He doesn't practice at half speed for anybody, quarterback or running back, teammate or opponent. He plays every single rep like it's a real game all year round, off-season included. That mentality followed him into a joint session with the Rams a second time, years apart from the first blow-up. When Las Vegas Raiders defensive end Maxx Crosby and Los Angeles Rams running back Cam Akers came to blows during a joint practice, there had to be one thought among those associated with both teams. Here we go again, because during a prior joint practice, several skirmishes resulted in the second practice being cancelled after a melee, forcing then-coach John Gruden to order his team back onto their buses. Crosby wasn't even on the roster for that earlier meltdown, but the pattern of Raiders practices boiling over with him at the center of it kept repeating. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford was asked about the Crosby-Akers fight and basically laughed it off, saying he didn't have the energy for that kind of drama, but respected that the 2 guys settled it and got back to work. That's the profile of a player who treats every single snap like life or death, whether it's a joint practice in July or a real game in January. And that intensity, combined with a knee that had kept him out of parts of the previous season, put him under a microscope heading into this camp. Before this year's training camp even opened, Crosby and the coaching staff sat down together. Now back in Las Vegas, Crosby and coaches had a formal sit-down before training camp to discuss his intensity on the practice field. Kubiak said it was not as much about protecting teammates or the team's quarterbacks, but helping Crosby stay on the field. He is working his way back from knee surgery. That context matters enormously. The staff wasn't worried about Crosby hurting someone else. They were worried about Crosby hurting himself by refusing to dial it back ever, even in a non-contact walkthrough period. And within 2 weeks of camp opening, exactly the scenario they feared played out. Except this time it wasn't his knee at risk, it was his relationship with the starting quarterback. There's also the trade context hanging over all of this. Crosby was traded to the Ravens, but Baltimore rejected the deal following what the franchise said was a failed physical. He was almost gone from Las Vegas entirely. Instead, he came back to a locker room that had to reintegrate a player who nearly left, with a body that wasn't fully cleared and an intensity level that the team explicitly acknowledged they needed to manage. That's the version of Crosby who lined up across from Cousins that Friday afternoon. Not a rookie testing boundaries, a franchise cornerstone the team had just tried to trade away, physically compromised, coming off a direct conversation with coaches about toning it down, and still hitting the quarterback's arm twice in one series. Now flip to the other side of the jersey grab. Kirk Cousins doesn't have a history of training camp fights. That's precisely what made this moment land so differently across the league. While Crosby's aggressive nature is well documented, Cousins' actions on Friday were an insight into his competitive spirit. 15 years in the NFL, and this was the moment that made people stop and pay attention to a side of him they rarely see on camera. Understand where Cousins is in his career right now. He's closing in on his 38th birthday, coming off a difficult stretch with Atlanta before signing with Las Vegas in the offseason. He appeared in 10 games with the Atlanta Falcons last season before signing with the Raiders in April. Cousins completed 61.7% of his throws for 1,721 yards and 10 touchdowns, compared to 5 interceptions during his 2025 campaign. Those aren't the numbers of a quarterback with total job security. He landed in Las Vegas as a bridge, a stabilizing veteran presence, while the Raiders groomed their newly drafted quarterback of the future. Every practice this camp has essentially been an audition, whether the team frames it that way publicly or not. And on the day of the fight, Cousins hadn't been sharp. He'd thrown 2 interceptions before that final team period. Every quarterback has bad reps, but for a 37-year-old trying to prove he still deserves the keys to an offense, each mistake carries more weight than it used to. Then Crosby hit his arm. Once, no big deal, physical football, that's what August is for. Twice, and something changed. This is a quarterback who has taken hits from NFL pass rushers for a decade and a half without ever needing to be restrained by his own teammates. Tight end Michael Mayer's comments matter here too, because he wasn't shocked by what he saw. He framed it as something he'd actually wanted to see from Cousins for a while. Mayer said Cousins has always had that edge, going all the way back to his first day with the team, and that as the starting quarterback right now, you want him to defend his teammates. That's telling. Mayer wasn't embarrassed by his quarterback grabbing a defensive lineman's jersey. He was almost validated by it, like it answered a question the locker room had quietly been asking about whether their new 37-year-old quarterback actually had any fire in him. There's a broader Raiders context that makes this even more significant. It may also serve as a rallying cry for a Raiders offense that was pushed around far too often in 2025. This wasn't just about one snap. It was about a group of offensive players who'd spent the previous season getting physically dominated. Watching their new quarterback refuse to back down from the best pass rusher in their own building. Cousins wasn't picking a fight with a stranger. He was standing up to a teammate, arguably the single most talented player on the entire Raiders roster, because he'd had enough of getting hit. In a strange way, that's exactly the kind of moment that can either fracture a quarterback standing in a locker room or cement it. Based on how Mayer and other teammates talked about it publicly, it did the latter. But here's the complication nobody was ignoring. Cousins isn't guaranteed to be the guy taking snaps once the regular season actually starts. Cousins likely will be the starter when the season begins, but even then, Kubiak has made no promises. The Raiders are expected to turn to Mendoza at some point this season. So every rep Cousins takes right now, every ounce of leadership he shows, every moment where he defends himself physically in front of the locker room, it's all happening while a rookie first overall pick waits in the wings, ready to take the job, the moment Kubiak decides it's time. That tension was already building before the fight. The fight just dragged it into the daylight, on video for the entire NFL to see. By the time the Raiders returned from their scheduled day off, the story had already traveled across every major football outlet in the country. Cousins and Crosby were back at practice Monday, exactly as Kubiak had promised. No lingering suspension, no fine reported, no roster consequence beyond that single missed session of team drills. Raiders coach Clint Kubiak said both players will practice Monday. The team is off Sunday. That was the entire punishment. One day standing on the sideline during 11-on-11 work, watching a rookie quarterback run the offense in their place. But the ripple effects didn't disappear that easily. Fernando Mendoza, the first overall pick, got a real look with the starting group because of the fallout, and reports out of camp suggested he made the most of it. With Cousins in the penalty box, a door opened for Mendoza. He ran the first team offense in Saturday's practice and looked sharp by the end of the workout. He consistently connected with tight end Brock Bowers, who has been the talk of training camp in Kubiak's scheme. Think about the irony there. The fight was never about Mendoza. It had nothing to do with him whatsoever. But because of a tipped pass and a grab jersey, the rookie the Raiders drafted to be their long-term answer at quarterback got an unscheduled audition running the number one offense, connecting with the team's best offensive weapon, in front of every coach and evaluator in the building. That's the part of this story that doesn't resolve neatly. Cousins won the moment publicly. His teammates praised his edge. His coach didn't single him out for blame, and he was back under center by Monday. But the entire situation existed inside a quarterback competition that was already simmering before a single punch was almost thrown. Every rep Mendoza takes with the starters, earned or circumstantial, chips away at whatever margin Cousins has left. Crosby, for his part, kept showing up exactly the way he always has. Ahead of camp, he'd already been warned by coaches about touching the quarterback. And within 2 weeks of that conversation, he'd hit Cousins' arm twice in a single series and triggered the first real disciplinary moment of the season. That's not a player who's suddenly going to change how he approaches every rep. His entire career, going back to college and through every joint practice he's ever been part of, has been built on refusing to take anything off the throttle. Kubiak's handling of it all says something about the kind of coach the Raiders are betting their season on. He didn't let it slide as boys being boys. He didn't overreact and turn it into a suspension story that would dominate headlines for a week. He drew a clean, simple line, "You don't fight in practice, no matter who you are," and applied it evenly to his two most important players. Then he closed the door on further questions, telling reporters that was all he had to say and that the team was moving forward. That kind of response tends to earn respect inside a locker room faster than a lengthy public lecture would. Players notice when a coach treats the $180 million quarterback and the all-pro pass rusher exactly the same way he'd treat a practice squad linebacker. It sets a tone for how the rest of the season will be managed, especially if this team ends up needing discipline in games that actually count. As for Cousins and Crosby personally, there's no indication of lingering tension between them. Kubiak addressed it with the whole team and both players individually, and by all accounts the relationship moved past it the moment practice resumed. Crosby's own words before camp about knowing he pushes the line and accepting the consequences that come with it suggest he wasn't holding a grudge over getting benched for a day. And Cousins, having made his point physically in front of the entire roster, had little left to prove by staying angry. What's left is a Raiders team heading into its preseason opener against Arizona, with a real live question mark at quarterback. A defensive superstar working his way back from injury while trying to rein in the exact intensity that makes him great. And a head coach who just demonstrated in the first real test of training camp exactly how he plans to run his locker room. The scoreboard hasn't started counting yet, but in Henderson, the season already found its first defining moment. A tipped pass, a grab jersey, and an announcement that told everyone watching precisely where this coaching staff draws the line.